Welcome to Adapt or Perish, the podcast about adaptation. This is episode number 5, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. Let's start right off with a correction from episode number 2, Jurassic Park. In that episode, we quoted this line from another Michael Crichton film, Congo. Quote, "They live for the opportunity to settle scores, and they have a lot of scores to settle." It has been pointed out to us that there were some inaccuracies in our reference to this line. First, it wasn't referring to the gorillas, but to the actual people of the country. Second, it wasn't Tim Curry that said it, but Ernie Hudson's character. So there we go. We just want to thank Matthew for that correction. Leaving the corrections department, let's talk about our next episode. Economic inequality, social injustice, child mortality, redemption, paranormal activity, time travel, all of these and more are contained in the tale of A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. For this upcoming episode, we read the classic novella and watched no less than 5 film adaptations, at least one of which had Muppets in it. Our Christmas present to you. We can't wait for you guys to hear it. As always, we'll talk about how to get in touch with us at the end of the episode, and we hope that you're all enjoying the show so far, telling your friends and leaving us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. And now, on with the show. Episode 5, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Welcome to Adapt or Perish, the podcast about adaptation. I'm Arielle Lipshaw.
And I'm Jeremy Latour.
And today we are going to be talking about The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
So right straight off the bat, what is your history with this property, let's call it, because it's not just a book.
It is my very favorite thing ever.
Right. I just want to make that clear right off the bat.
Right.
It is Jeremy's absolute favorite thing ever.
It is my favorite thing.
So this is a little bit of an unusual property, and I'm going to call it a property for a very specific reason, which is that everything that we've covered up to this point, we've talked about an original book, which then had spin-offs of different type of media, whether it was TV or movies or whatever. But this actually, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, actually began as a radio series on the BBC, which was then made into a book. And then it was made into a TV show.
Yep.
And then it was made into a video game.
There was a computer game. Yeah.
Okay. And then it was made into, I think there was something in between there.
There was an illustrated novel, and then there was a comic book, and then finally we end with a movie.
A feature film.
Yes.
Yes.
So quite a lot.
Quite a lot. But I want to try to remember that we're not talking about the book as the original thing. It actually began life as a 6-episode BBC radio play, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Because I like radio plays. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's pretty unusual.
I think so.
So, okay, so you say it's your favorite thing of all time.
Yes.
Talk to me about that. When were you first introduced to The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy?
So, like a lot of comedy, I was introduced to it by my dad. Mm-hmm. So when I was a kid, there were a few different things in terms of comedy that my parents introduced me to. And it was things like Monty Python, right? Mm-hmm. And Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy was a big part of that.
Right.
Which, considering that I loved Monty Python, that would make a lot of sense.
Right. And did you come to the book first, or did you come to the book and then realize it was a radio play? Or
Book first.
Book first.
Yeah, but the book was the first thing that I was ever introduced to. My initial experience of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy was my dad reading the book to me.
Cool.
Yeah.
And not to put the cart before the horse, because maybe the answer you're going to give to this question won't make sense out of context, because we haven't really talked about what this thing is yet. Mm-hmm. But what about it is the thing, if you had to say one thing that either you relate to or the thing that you just love more than anything, what is that thing for you?
I think that Douglas Adams, as an author, his sense of humor most closely relates to my own sense of humor.
Okay.
And I actually think I'm saying that backwards. I think that I got my sense of humor from a lot of different places, and Douglas Adams was maybe the primary place I got my sense of humor from.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is probably a good point to mention. Douglas Adams wrote the radio play, which he then turned into a book.
Right.
Which he then turned into, I believe he was the writer of the TV series.
He was.
Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah. But sadly, he was not the writer of the movie that came out in 2005 because unfortunately he died in...
He actually was the writer of it.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. So he was working on the movie up until his death in 2001.
Oh, okay.
So he spent a lot of the 90s was actually spent trying to get it to turn this into a movie. And so he worked on the script. And then after he died, I think things got paused for a little bit. And then they brought in a new writer to kind of finish the script. And we can talk more about that when we talk about the movie.
Yeah.
But he was actually one of the credited screenwriters on the movie.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. And they're, well, we can talk about it later, but they do a very nice tribute to him at the end of the movie.
Oh, they do.
Yeah,
They
it's very
absolutely
sweet.
do.
Okay, so let's talk about what is The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It is, what's the story? Who are the characters? So in the radio play, do you want to do the 1 minute plot summary?
Let me do the 1 minute plot summary.
Okay, do you want me to time you?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, do you want me? I don't have anything that I can actually.
Okay.
Okay, he's got his watch.
I am timing myself. So, Arthur Dent is a 6 foot tall ape descendant.
A human man.
Who lives on the planet Earth.
Yes.
And then the Earth gets destroyed. And he is saved by his friend Ford, Prefect, who is from Beetlejuice.
Which he did not know.
He did not know that.
He's an alien.
And he is saved. And then the story follows Arthur's misadventures in space.
There you go.
That's the best way that I can describe it.
Yeah, that's great.
That's essentially it.
So you would say Arthur Dent is the main character.
Arthur Dent is absolutely the main character.
So he's a human man, and let's talk about some of the other characters because they're sort of like a small group, kind of like the Wizard of Oz or any book where there's sort of like a small group of characters traveling and they meet different people along the way.
Right. And I want to talk about those characters, but then I want to come back to what you just said.
Okay.
Because you compared it like to the Wizard of Oz.
Okay.
So let's talk about some of those characters.
Okay.
Who's his Tin Man and Lion and Scarecrow?
Okay. So I would say his Tin Man.
Oh, maybe not even directly.
Well, I mean, the lion is Marvin, the paranoid android.
Okay. If we're being literal. Sure.
If we're being literal. He also has his friend, Ford Prefect. Who is an alien.
Can I make a quick note about Ford?
Yes.
So this is, again, I came to this as a small child living in the United States.
Yes.
I didn't know that a Ford Prefect is a car.
Right.
I didn't understand that when I was a kid.
So you didn't get that joke at all.
Didn't get the joke.
You also didn't get the joke about the zebra crossing.
Didn't know. There's a whole joke about how someone's killed in a zebra crossing. I thought that meant a place where zebras cross a road.
I mean, that's really cute.
Didn't know that.
Anyway, there is also Ford Prefect's good friend, or I'm sorry, his cousin. His cousin.
We can say cousin.
His semi-cousin.
Yep.
Zaphod Beeblebrox. And what is his job?
He is the president of the galaxy.
President of the galaxy. And is that an important job?
We come to find out it is not that important.
And there's also another Earth person, and that is a young woman named Trillian.
Trillian.
Yeah.
Trisha McMillan.
Yes. And that is the core group.
Exactly.
Right? And they kind of are going around the galaxy having adventures and misadventures.
Exactly.
Yes.
So I said I wanted to come back to something you just said.
Okay.
Because it's easy to compare it to something like The Wizard of Oz. One of the things that I love about The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is the way that it subverts those type of stories.
Right.
And I'll say one specific way.
Okay.
Arthur as a character goes on a journey physically, and he certainly goes on a journey emotionally. He does not grow by the end of the story.
Right, he's the same person.
He really is the same person.
Right, there's not a lot of character development. I don't think that's the point.
That's not the point.
Yeah.
Like, to me, if there is a point, if I had to actually, say this is the point of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, it's a joke delivery system.
Right.
It exists just to deliver jokes.
Right.
Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that, yeah. So let's talk about some of the jokes, because there are some really funny things. I mean, I think one thing that's really a through line is sort of Douglas Adams's attitude toward technology.
Mm-hmm.
That is sort of a running joke throughout.
Mm-hmm.
So there are some pieces of technology that have personalities. One is Marvin, the paranoid android.
Mm-hmm.
One is the ship's computer.
Oh, let's talk about the ship for a second.
Okay.
So, Zaphod Beeblebrox is the president of the galaxy.
Yeah.
And his entrance into the story, we are introduced to him as having just stolen the most amazing spaceship in the galaxy.
Right.
The Heart of Gold.
And the reason that it's the most amazing spaceship is it has an improbability drive.
An infinite improbability drive.
Excuse me. Yes, an infinite improbability drive.
And I love it because, like all of the science in this book, it's just a joke.
Right.
This is just Douglas Adams saying, I've got a joke. I've got something funny. And I'm going to make it work, but I'm only going to make it work in the context of a joke.
But it actually contributes to the plot. And I think that's one of the things that I really liked about The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which is like, there is a lot of really ridiculous stuff, but it's all consistent within the universe that Douglas Adams has created.
Right.
So even the things that are meant to be inconsistent are still consistent because we're given to understand that insane stuff happens all the time.
Yeah, basically Arthur, I think, is thrust into a universe where everyone agrees, oh, impossible stuff happens all the time, and you just kind of have to roll with it.
Right. But unlike some books or novels, or especially like in science fiction, that sometimes you feel that the world is inconsistent, you don't spend a lot of time worrying about what the rules of this world are because you're immediately given to understand that everything's insane, but that's okay. Like I think it works really, really well, and he's laid the background really, really well for just impossible stuff to happen all the time.
Yeah, there's even a section towards the end when we talk about the restaurant at the end of the universe, Milliways, which exists at the end of time, right as the universe is about to end. And the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is itself a character in the book.
Right.
And
it's basically the internet.
It's I want to talk about that a little bit more. So the book is describing to us how the business model of Milliways works. And every single point that it makes is punctuated by the phrase, "This is, of course, impossible."
Right.
And it's amazing.
Right.
I love
that.
it.
That was good. Mm-hmm. I like that. Yeah. I mean, some other, I feel like Douglas Adams himself must have had a bit of a contentious relationship with technology because every piece of technology in the book has a personality, and most of those personalities are very annoying.
I'm super interested to explore this for a second.
Okay.
Because I am intimately familiar with how he felt about technology.
Are you?
I want to hear, based on listening and reading to all of this, how would you characterize his relationship?
I mean, so I'm going to talk about a couple of different pieces of technology that appear in the story. I'm going to start calling it the story.
Sure.
I think that's easiest.
I think that makes the most sense.
There are elevators that argue with you about taking you where you want to go.
Yeah. There
is a ship's computer that is eminently cheerful, but ultimately very stupid.
Yep.
And can't do anything. There is an android that will do what you ask it to do, but very grudgingly. There are a bunch of different types of spaceships, all of which sort of have a different purpose, but all of which ultimately are pretty useless. And, well, you say what you were going to say, because there was something that I really enjoy, and maybe I'm getting slightly off topic from what you wanted to say about his actual relationship to technology.
Yeah.
But something that I love in any kind of sci-fi is watching the way that the writer anticipated future technology. And sometimes it's really funny. So like in Star Trek, for example, they have iPads. They have I'm talking about Next Generation. They have what are clearly iPads, but they think of them, the writers clearly thought of them, each one being like a book. So you'll see someone with like a stack of iPads. They didn't anticipate being able to store as much content on an iPad as possible. They also, all of the control panels and everything are like flat touch screens, but they're all literally just buttons. Like they didn't anticipate the way that we can interact with touch screens by like moving things around and tapping and dragging. It's literally just buttonless buttons. And I think that's really funny. So one of the things that I noticed was that Zaphod at one point is listening to the radio, and Douglas Adams anticipated touchscreens because he talks about touchscreens. He anticipated like post touchscreens, like being able to tell it what you want or waving your hands in the air. Like we have a TV that you wave your hand in front of it to turn it off and on. Like you don't actually have to touch it. But he wasn't able to anticipate on-demand content because he's literally just listening to the radio program and being annoyed that nothing good is on. So I just thought that was really, really funny. Okay, go ahead.
So here's the thing about Douglas Adams. He loved technology more than anyone.
Okay.
He was obsessed with technology. He was a huge, another thing that I identified with him is he's a huge Apple fan.
Okay.
Loved Apple.
Right.
He had a really close relationship with Stephen Fry, who we're going to talk about a little bit later in the episode. And there was an article Stephen Fry had written at one point about going to Apple to see the first iPad. And he talked about how sad he was that Douglas would never get to see it. And he remembered that in the 80s when I think it was when the original Macintosh came out in 1984, he said Douglas Adams was the first person in the UK to actually get one, and he was the second.
That's funny.
So they not only had a really good relationship with each other, but Douglas Adams had an incredibly close relationship with technology. And I think that puts a really interesting kind of lens on the whole story, because he loves technology in the way that I love technology, which is I love what it can do, but isn't it silly how frustrating it can be sometimes?
Right.
How exciting is it that it can be so frustrating sometimes?
That's funny.
You know, one of my favorite lines in the book is he refers to humans as still thinking that digital watches are a pretty neat idea.
Right.
He thinks digital watches are a pretty neat idea. He loves this stuff. He loves this stuff. So that was actually his relationship with technology.
Yeah. That's great.
But I want to expand on something that we talked about before, which was how The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy itself kind of presaged the internet.
Right. It is a repository of all knowledge.
Right.
That can be called up on demand.
I don't think that he necessarily created the guide because he saw the internet coming.
Right.
He came up with the concept of the guide. And I think once the internet became a thing, fans of the book saw it as a modern day Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Interesting.
So one of the things that happens, so if you want to go, if you could only have one website, access to one website for the rest of your life, and you wanted a website that was going to give you as much information as possible, what website would that be?
Wikipedia.
Exactly. Did you know that there's a Hitchhiker's Guide website?
No.
It's called h2g2.com. And before Wikipedia, it was designed to be a central repository of all knowledge.
Okay, all right.
But it never really took off because I think they still had this idea in their mind that it would be like the Encyclopedia Britannica, where you would have a group of people making it.
Right. And then it would be like published.
Exactly. And then the thing that Wikipedia did so well is that it actually did it in a crowdsourcing way. And I think that's why it's so popular.
Yeah.
But I actually think it's kind of a circular thing. He saw there being this repository, and then the internet came about, and it's not that he saw the internet coming, it's that he saw a central repository coming. The internet was invented, and then other people said, oh, this is the thing that he saw coming.
Right.
Let's turn this into the thing that he loves.
Yeah.
Let's turn this into the thing that he saw coming.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
That does make sense.
I haven't had to articulate this,
No,
so
no,
I'm probably not articulating it very well.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is a theme of the book. So I said to you, maybe we could talk about like our favorite characters or our favorite part, and you said no, impossible.
I can't.
I can't. I love this. I love this too much. I would just list off all the characters. But I can say who my favorite character is.
Who is your favorite character?
My favorite character is a character named Slarty Bartfast.
Whose name is not important.
One of the things that I really like about his name is when said in a British accent, it's pretty much just vowel sounds. It's Slarty Bartfast.
He's the best.
It's great. And he is a very old planet designer. And he won a major award.
Yeah, for designing what?
For designing Norway.
Yes, he really loves fjords.
He loves fjords.
The little fiddly bits along the coast.
I've got 1,000 glaciers poised and ready to... What is it he said?
To roll out over
To
Africa.
roll out over Africa.
I couldn't pick a favorite character and I couldn't pick a favorite line, but I think I can rattle off a couple that I love.
Okay, go ahead.
So, I don't know, maybe I do have a favorite line. I think my actual favorite line in the whole book is at the beginning when Douglas is describing the Vogon, the fleet of Vogon ships hurtling over the earth. Mm-hmm. He describes them as hanging in the air exactly the same way that bricks don't.
Yes, you did really like that.
That is my favorite.
When that happened in the movie.
That, and when I said before about it, like, affecting my sense of humor, mm-hmm. the idea that you can take something like that and just twist it a little bit and look at it from a different perspective, an utterly absurd perspective.
Right.
Because they do hang in the air exactly the same way that bricks don't.
Literally true.
That is literally true, but who would ever say that?
Right.
So his perspective was something I always found really important.
Yeah.
Slarter Bartfast has one of my favorite lines. He wants Arthur to come with him. So he says, come along or you'll be late. And Arthur says, late for what? And he says, what's your name, Earthman? And he says, Dent, Arthur Dent. He says, late, as in the late, Dent, Arthur Dent. It's sort of a threat, you see. I've never been very good at them, but I've heard they can be terribly effective. I want to pause for 1 second. I want to let the audience know that we have got a hungry dog that is hanging out right now.
He's being so annoying right now, so I think we're going to have to feed him
and then pause.
Come back.
We're going to come right back. So the dog he's being very annoying right now. He wants a lot of attention and he's not letting us do this. He's very cute. His name is Oscar. # off-brand dog.
He has been walked and fed.
He's been walked and fed.
And usually he goes right to sleep after being walked and fed.
But not today.
Not
today. So let's kind of continue on. And I feel like, we already said this is going to be a weirder episode because it's not as linear. It's not like book, movie, something like that.
Right.
I feel like one of the things we have to say is that just in terms of the timeline, the radio series was the late 70s. The book was the late 70s. The TV show was 81. They really are kind of one thing. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. They were all being developed and being written and being conceived all around the same time.
Yes.
So we could say it was a radio show and then it became a book and then they turned it into a TV show, but I don't think it's as linear as that.
No, although I do want to talk a little bit about the TV show just because that's the first time we have this represented in a visual medium.
Oh yeah, it's very important.
It's important, and mm-hmm. also, it's sci-fi, right?
Yeah.
But it's also clearly very low budget, like very low budget BBC, like amazing special effects, mm-hmm. Just fantastic, like literally like. Do you want to talk about our favorite thing that we saw?
Oh my God, what was your favorite thing?
So Zaphod Beeblebrox, for those who don't know, has 3 arms.
And
2 heads.
Can I just say one quick thing about that?
Yeah.
This was a throwaway line in the radio series. Uh-huh. Ford sees him and says, hey, Zaphod, I like the second head. It was just a joke. And then when they were making the TV show, they're like, oh shit, we need to make a second head and a third arm. So please continue.
So there's a point at which he's speaking, and the third arm, usually it's just like a stuffed arm attached to his costume, but I guess for whatever reason they felt that the third arm had to be gesturing at whatever point in time. I don't remember what it was that he was saying, but... It's
when they were at Milliways.
Yeah, but you can see the guy standing behind him playing the part of the third arm. It's like a stagehand.
Yeah, he's wearing a green t-shirt and
jeans. And you can see like the butt of his jeans sticking out from the side of the actor playing Zaphod Beeblebrox.
And it's almost distracting from just how bad the second head is.
Yeah.
It is a lifeless shell of a head on his shoulder that occasionally has lines and his mouth moves a little bit.
Yeah.
And his head turns a little bit. It's awful.
It's really good.
It's really, really amazingly bad.
Yeah. I mean, the 80s aesthetic, I would say the 80s aesthetic is
well, at that time it was just an aesthetic.
Right. Is nowhere as apparent as in the way that Trillian is portrayed and costumed.
It's very modern.
She looks like she should be teaching an aerobics video.
Yeah.
Like, she's wearing pretty much like an aerobics outfit, and her hair is like platinum blonde and crimped, and she's got like her rouge or blush on her face is basically like her whole face. Mm-hmm. Like, And I didn't know whether they were trying to say, like, this is how aliens wear makeup, or whether it's just like, oh no, they wore their makeup like that back then. But it's I found it a little distracting.
I think I will, to defend it.
Okay,
I think they were aiming for camp.
No, that's fair. That's fair.
I think they were aiming for like Flash Gordon.
Okay. No, that's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. But it's Flash Gordon as seen through the guise of the 1980s.
Yeah.
Like if you stood her up, never mind the context, in front of anyone and said, what decade is this person from? They would say, oh, that's the 80s.
Mm-hmm. And if they said, oh, late 70s, you'd say basically the same thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But she reminds me of like the people in my mom's like Jane Fonda aerobics tapes from when I was a child.
Mm-hmm. Another thing that I think is important to bring up is that this was all happening pretty much concurrently with Doctor Who.
Oh, okay.
So Douglas Adams was actually a script editor on Doctor Who for a long time. Mm-hmm. And he was working on Doctor Who while he was also writing Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And one of the funny things that I read about the making of it is that, you know, Doctor Who kind of famously would always rely on like quarries to look like alien planets.
Okay.
And one of his rules when they were making Hitchhiker's Guide was, I don't want quarries. I don't want quarries.
Kind of like every alien planet on Star Trek looks like Southern California.
Exactly. So when they were making it, there's Magrathea, which is the planet where they make planets,
mm-hmm.
where they made Earth, and Slarta Bartfast lives and works. And he said, you know, we want it to look like Morocco, so they looked into shooting in Morocco. They eventually shot it in Cornwall, in a rock quarry.
In a quarry, yeah.
Yep, it's 100% where they shot it.
Yeah.
So, you know, best laid plans of mice. And men. Oh God, I love so many lines from it. But that was just one thing about the making of it, is that if you look at like that era of Doctor Who, I would say they're basically indistinguishable. Like they look exactly the same.
Well, one of the things that I loved about the way that it was shot was there are a couple of times when they're on the ship and the ship is like being attacked, and the actors are like, well, you can go on YouTube. I keep bringing up Star Trek. You can go on YouTube and you can find like shots of this the sort of the still shots of the Star Trek actors like having to like kind of swing their bodies around to indicate that the bridge is being attacked. Mm-hmm. And it looks really, really weird because the camera is not moving. But in this case, the camera doesn't move. So it happens a couple of times that like they're just like, bless them. The actors are doing the best they can. It's not the actor's fault, but like they're kind of like rocking and rolling and like moving their shoulders and like pretending to kind of fall over, but it just looks like they're kind of like having a minor like seizure because the camera is still
as a group.
Yeah.
Just a group seizure.
Yeah. And I guess I was just wondering, like, does it cost more in the budget to have a camera that you can move?
No, I actually have a theory about that.
Okay, go ahead.
So, you know, the original series of Star Trek,
mm-hmm.
Next Generation, was all shot on film. Mm-hmm. These were shot with film cameras.
Okay.
And, you know, at the time, film cameras can be actually surprisingly small.
Okay.
You know, they can be carried. The video cameras that the BBC was using, because BBC for years, they would shoot exteriors on film, and they would shoot interiors in a studio with video cameras.
Right.
But these were like studio video cameras. These are the cameras they would use to shoot like late night
news,
shows.
Yeah.
Exactly. So they don't move. So those cameras, you can't shake them left and right. A film camera you can do that with.
Yeah.
Which is why Star Trek in the 60s looks better than Hitchhiker's Guide in 81.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my understanding of it.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah. And if anybody has any more information in regards to that, please write us.
Yeah, we're happy to be wrong.
Yeah, but that's my kind of working understanding of it.
Yeah.
It's cheap though.
Yeah, I mean, like like Marvin doesn't look great.
Nope.
It's not great.
But
his voice is great. I mean, the acting is great.
But that's the thing, is I think that the world of Hitchhiker's Guide not only, I don't think, is negatively affected by bad special effects and bad design, I think it's enhanced by it.
Yeah.
I think it still works perfectly.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you something that I have a thought on, but I was interested to get your take. Mm-hmm. How do you feel? So there's there's big chunks of like sort of narration, which is either talking about what the Hitchhiker's Guide says or actually like reading from the Hitchhiker's Guide. And in the radio play, the narrator is actually his role is called the book.
Yes.
Like and it's basically saying like this is the main role. The main part is the book. And so they have a very similar thing in the TV show, but they sort of have some sort of crude animations to kind of go along with what you're being told. How did you feel about those segments?
I think the animations are amazing.
Yeah, okay.
I love the animations. I really think that they are silly, and I think they're incredibly consistent. I actually have a lot of respect for the animations because whoever was creating them created a very, very consistent kind of character for the guide throughout the 6 episodes of the series. No, I really liked it.
Yeah.
I think it works really well.
Yeah, for some reason for me, like, I think it works well. For some reason for me, I felt like it dragged, like, even more so, like, because I saw we watched the TV series before I listened to the radio play, and for some reason, hearing sort of the same amount of narration in the radio play didn't feel like it took as long as in the TV show, and I guess it's because when you're watching a TV show, you expect to see something. Does that make sense? Whereas in radio, you're more expecting just to hear someone talk at you.
Yeah.
So that was my only feeling, was that it felt like it dragged a little bit for me.
I actually agree with that.
Yeah.
That's actually, so I think that the sense of humor is perfectly in place in the radio show and the book and the show.
Oh yeah, the sense of humor and the sort of tone of it is very consistent.
Yeah, but I do think that rhythm and timing is kind of all over the map.
Yeah.
I think that the timing in the radio show and the book is pretty much spot on. I think the timing's a little weird in the TV show.
Yeah.
I think there are parts of it that do drag.
Yeah.
And I don't think the rhythm works as well. And I don't know how much that is as a result of the script. I don't know how much of it is as a result. I think it's really more performance and editing. I think that's where it comes from. But would you agree that the rhythm is just kind of odd?
Yeah, no, I think maybe that's what I mean. Like the narration feels like dense, like it feels like there's a lot, and then like other stuff feels like you're not quite sure what's going on. I do want to call out one actor in the TV show before we move on.
Yeah.
Because he was sort of the ultimate hey, it's that guy for us.
Yeah.
Which is the actor who plays Slarta Bartfast.
And I've watched this for years.
Yeah. So that actor plays a very minor character in another one of our favorite movies, which is the Beatles film A Hard Day's Night. So if anyone's familiar with A Hard Day's Night, he's the guy on the train at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, the one who fought the war.
The one who fought the war for their sort. And it was just really cool. I don't know that I've ever seen that guy in anything else.
He's great.
Yeah, he was so great.
He's so good as Slarta Bartfast.
Yeah, I just love Slarta Bartfast. He's definitely my favorite character.
You know, I feel like, we're going to get to the end of this, and I don't think I'm going to be able to say, like, I've tried to think about this, that, this version is my favorite, this version is my favorite. I think at the end of the day, the book is the best version of it. I think even Douglas Adams agreed that the book was the best version of it. But for me, I don't know about for you, I can't pick one, but I know which parts of which adaptations were my favorite.
Yeah.
Like, the Slarta Bartfast that's in the TV show is my favorite Slarta Bartfast of all of them.
Yeah, he was great.
And Simon Jones as Arthur, he's my favorite version of Arthur.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. There was actually one section of the TV show that really deviated from the book and the radio play.
Yeah.
And that was the deep thought section.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about that because, so there's, in the book and in the radio play, they describe a society that builds a supercomputer to come up with the answer to the ultimate question
of life, the universe, and everything.
Life, the universe, and everything. And in the book, those people are described as like sort of boring business people, like guys with briefcases coming into the office and talking to Deep Thought, the computer, and asking it questions and whatever. In the TV show, they went a totally different direction. They made them like ancient philosophers. I can only imagine because they had like a costume closet full of like wigs and tinfoil from like Monty Python's The Life of Brian, because that's what it looked like to me. They were all in these sort of like biblical like wigs and like robes and stuff. I think the note that I wrote down was everyone is wrapped in tinfoil and Monty Python wigs.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any insight as to why they made that change? Because that was the only really major change I think that I noticed.
None.
Yeah.
I have no insight into that.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
There we go.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have any like feeling about it. But it was just funny because we watched the TV show first,
Mm-hmm.
so I was like, oh, okay, that's how it is. But
they're described differently.
They're described very differently.
No, I think the only insight I would have into it is any impression that I've gotten from reading about the making of all of these is that Douglas Adams was kind of famously not very... He had a weird kind of way of both being very precious about his work and not precious at all.
Mm-hmm.
And he would kind of pick and choose the places where he was. So I think this is just him not being very precious about those characters and the way he wrote them.
Someone just having an idea.
Someone had an idea and he was probably just like, hey, that works. That's funny.
Yeah.
Let's do that. Yeah, I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
That's my impression of it.
Yeah. And the only other note I had on like the way that things were visually presented in the TV show was when the MC at the restaurant at the end of the universe came out, and I went, wait, when did Cabaret come out? Because his look is Joel Grey in Cabaret.
Yeah.
Like his makeup and his lipstick and like the way that his hair is, like that is directly... it's not even so much an homage as just directly taken.
It's a reference.
It's a reference, a direct reference to Joel Grey and Cabaret, which I thought was nice. A nice musical theater reference in there.
And in 1981, that's still like part of popular culture.
Oh, yeah.
Like recent popular culture.
Yeah, because when was Cabaret? Like 72?
Something like that.
Something
It was like
that.
in the decade leading up to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess I'm just trying to think if there's anything else I want to say about, just some differences between all of them. It's funny how there are a lot of little differences, but they don't really add up to much. They never really affect the story as a whole.
No.
If you look at the radio show, it begins and ends in the same way that the TV show begins and ends, and in the same way that the first two books begin and end.
Yeah, even to the extent that each episode of the radio show really is pretty much syncs up one-to-one with each episode of the TV show.
Yeah, they really go along.
It's 6 and 6, and pretty much the same thing happens in
Right.
like episode 5 of the TV show as episode 5 of the radio show.
Which is weird because the book, like the first 4 episodes of each kind of match up with the first book. And then he takes the last 2 episodes and expands it and adds a whole new plot involving Zaphod and Trillian.
Right.
Who die at the end of the radio series.
Yeah.
They get eaten. Ugh. And I honestly can't remember off the top of my head how he justifies them being saved.
Yeah.
But they do get eaten at the end of the radio series.
It's unfortunate.
But they get a whole story in the book, which is really nice. And they don't die in the TV show. They just kind of disappear.
Yes.
They all transport off the ship that they're on.
Yeah.
But they all kind of begin and end in the same way. There was one little thing that I liked that changed from the radio series to the book and the show. Mm-hmm. And it informs a lot of the way that I look at the character of Arthur Dent. Mm-hmm. The version of Arthur Dent that I like the most is the one who really is just a passenger.
Right.
He's not very active in this because he's out of his depth.
Right.
The entire time. And at the beginning of the story... there's these workers that want to drive a bypass through his house. They're going to knock his house down. And there's a great scene where in the book and in the TV show where Ford kind of walks the foreman through a weird kind of mental roundabout explaining to him why it's okay for them to leave.
Right.
And telling him not to knock his house down.
Right.
And it's great, and Arthur just kind of goes along with it. Mm-hmm. But in the original radio series,
it's
Arthur doing that.
Right.
And I like that.
I noticed that.
I like that they made the decision to make Arthur less active.
Yeah.
And less intelligent as time goes on.
Well, you sort of have to like give all the personality to one character. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
And Ford has a lot of personality.
He does.
Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't talked a lot about him.
Yeah.
So maybe we could move on to the 2005 movie.
Yeah.
So I want to read the first note that I made on this movie. Which is actually something that I said to you at the time, so I don't think it's a big surprise.
Right.
What I wrote down was, I'm seeing women's names in the credits, so they must have added characters.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's, I feel like this is a recurring theme in a lot of the stuff that we are looking at, but as you say...
It's time for my favorite segment.
Which is?
The female character is a little underwritten.
Yep.
So I say this with all respect.
Yes.
Because I know this is something that you dearly, dearly love.
I dearly, dearly love this thing that admittedly has some flaws.
Yes, yes. And so I'm only talking about my thoughts on this particular character and not the value of the work at large. Is that fair to say?
I think that's fair, and I appreciate that.
Okay, great. So Trillian is a...
I didn't know which woman you were going to talk about.
That is a joke. That is a joke because there's only one.
Yeah.
There's one female character. Her name is Trillian. To Douglas Adams's credit, I think he was trying to defy convention with Trillian because he explicitly says, or has other characters say about her, how smart she is, how interesting she is, incidentally, how pretty she is. But I think the words devastatingly intelligent were used. Now, to be fair, it's Arthur Dent who says that about her, and Arthur Dent is maybe, not the smartest cookie in the box.
I think he can recognize intelligence when he sees it.
Yeah,
though.
I'm just saying, in comparison to Arthur, she is described as being smarter. And we know that she has dual degrees in mathematics and astrophysics, so clearly she's smart, right? And I appreciate that Douglas Adams was trying to say, look, this person is of value because of who she is. She's not just tagging along to be like someone's girlfriend.
Right. And one other thing I will say is that she's there because she wants to be there.
Yes, that is absolutely true.
She wasn't taken on this adventure.
Right. She chose to go.
I don't want to derail what you're saying, but do you feel like I can say a quick thing about her relationship with Arthur, or do you want me to wait on that?
No, hold off on that.
Okay.
Only because I think this leads nicely into talking about the movie.
Sure.
I think that... So I think that was done... That seems to me to have been done consciously and with best intentions. If that's fair to say.
Yes.
For me, just based on the actions that we see happen over the course of the book, she feels like she has less agency than the other characters. Although, as you say, like, for some of the characters, like Arthur, the point is that they don't have any agency. You know what I mean?
Right.
But sometimes it just kind of feels like she's kind of there to have reactions and not to necessarily make decisions that do anything. Although I did feel like in the radio series, she was a little bit more present than in some of the other versions.
That version of Trillian is my favorite version of Trillian.
Yeah. No, I did think she was like solving things and got some good lines in the radio series. In the TV series, gosh, I think she's really, I don't know if it's just direction or what, but I really thought she was played as kind of a bimbo. Like
it's
I
really
wasn't
weird.
I didn't love that.
I'm reading about the making of the show. They loved her, and they cast her because their feeling was she made the lines funnier.
Yeah,
they cast her because of her comedic ability. That's specifically why they said they cast her. And it's a little weird because I think she's okay. I don't think she's wonderful in it. Yeah. Yeah,
she just was kind of nothing. Now, in the movie, and this is where maybe what you were going to say can come into it.
Yeah.
In the movie, they go in a very different and I think very modern direction.
Yep.
Modern for 2005, which is they make her into the Manic Pixie Dream Girl.
Literally, like the proto Manic Pixie Dream Girl.
Yeah. So was there something you wanted to say about that?
Yeah, before we get into it, and this is going to inform a lot of the stuff we talk about in terms of the way Trillian and Arthur's relationship is in the movie. To me, one of the things I love about Trillian is that she's one of the clearest ways to realize just how much of a sad sack Arthur is. Yeah. He really is this, like, proto-nice guy.
I was about to say, especially in the 2005 movie, I mean, he is a trademark nice guy.
Absolutely.
Nice guy, capital N, capital G, nice guy.
You know, even in the radio show in the book, he talks about, I went to this party and I met this woman who was beautiful and devastatingly intelligent. And then this guy just waltzes in and says...
He took her from me.
He took her from me.
Like,
I was really working up to it.
Like, he assumes he's entitled to her, which for the late 70s, early 80s, like, it's like, okay, that was the time. But then by the time you get to 2005, it's really gross to hear him say that. Like, he's saying the same kind of stuff.
But that's the thing I like about it. I think this all speaks to how just kind of dumb Arthur is. Because if you only hear about it through him, he was wrong.
Right.
But once you meet Trillian, you realize, oh, no, she made her decision. And I think one of the things that really speaks to her intelligence is how she doesn't really have any desire to make a place in her life for Arthur Dent.
Yes. Yes. She was like, no, this guy came along. He was more interesting. So I did that.
And he had a spaceship.
Yeah, he had a spaceship.
So of course I'm going to do that.
Why would I not do that? I have a degree in astrophysics. Why would I not do that?
There is nothing to me in the radio show or the book or the show that really tells me that she actually cares about Zaphod.
Right.
Like, she knows what she wants. She wanted adventure. She wanted to leave. She wanted to go on a spaceship.
Right.
And to me, that, I think, speaks to, you say she doesn't have agency. To be fair, we don't see this. We hear about it.
Right.
But I think it speaks to her agency as a character, even though we don't necessarily see those choices being made.
I think that's totally fair. Yeah, I think that's totally fair.
Yeah, but that's the thing I like about her relationship with Arthur in every version, almost every version, is that she doesn't have patience for him. She thinks he's this guy.
He's just this guy.
He's just this guy. She thinks he's this guy, but like, Arthur, come on. What are you doing? This is not happening.
It came across in the 2005 movie. I think the reason is because there was an extended flashback to the scene where he was at this party and met her and was like falling for her and all this stuff, and then flashes back to the present where he's like, you took her from me. I mean, what I wrote down was...
At Zaphod,
yeah. I mean, what I wrote down was, why does he assume he's entitled to her? Like, just because you have a conversation with a guy doesn't mean that you're his forever. You know? Like, that's shitty.
And instead of Trillian... Oh, okay, so let's get into the movie.
Yeah.
All right. How do we want to do this? I like that, we have our little tradition of we talk about the things we like before we talk about the things we don't like.
Yes.
So I want to get back to this.
Okay.
Because this is absolutely... The relationship between Trillian and Arthur is one of the things that I don't like.
Right. I don't like it either.
But can we talk about some of the things we like?
Yes, absolutely.
Is that all right?
Mm-hmm.
Would you like to start?
Yes.
Would you like me to start?
No.
Okay.
I really like Martin Freeman.
Mm-hmm.
We just talked about Martin Freeman in a different episode for playing a different character.
Yep.
And this is just so in his wheelhouse, the sort of like out of his depth, like little guy in a big world. Like that's The Hobbit too. But obviously this came before that. You're being very quiet, so I feel like you disagree.
Yeah. I think he is miscast.
Okay.
And I think he was cast perfectly for the version of Hitchhiker's Guide that they wanted to make in the movie. Mm-hmm. But, as I'm going to get into, I don't agree with their vision of the movie.
Okay.
And so I don't agree with his casting.
Okay.
Because I think Martin Freeman is a very sympathetic actor.
Okay.
I really care about Martin Freeman when I see him in anything. I think he really is great at making a connection with the audience. Mm-hmm. But as I've said, Arthur Dent is not someone who I connect with very much.
Right. So maybe that's the problem.
Yeah.
Like Arthur Dent should have been less sympathetic.
I think he should have been less sympathetic.
Yeah.
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 But Martin Freeman is a fantastic actor. Mm-hmm. And I think he is very good in it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How did you feel about Ford Prefect?
Okay. I have to wait until I talk about the things I don't like.
Oh, all right.
Yep.
All right. Say a thing that you liked.
I will say I think Mos Def is great, but I have to talk about stuff. I loved how inventive this movie was. Mm-hmm. I love how they clearly had a big budget. They had a movie-sized budget, but not as big as you would think. Mm-hmm. And so it was directed by a guy named Garth Jennings, mm-hmm. who was part of a partnership called Hammer and Tongs. Okay. And they did a lot of music videos and commercials, and they were recommended for the job. So Garth Jennings ended up directing it. He did another movie that is, I think, pretty near perfect called Son of Rambo.
I don't know it.
It's really, really great. And if anyone hasn't seen it, you should put it on your list. He's great, and he's great at making things really, really interesting with a small budget. Mm-hmm. So the movie has a really, really great mix of special effects kind of techniques. And I think it's all mixed really well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I thought that like the way they did the Vogons, for example, was really good.
They were great.
They looked great. Like,
those puppets were great.
Yeah, they were definitely like appropriately disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, the way they did Zaphod's two heads.
Yeah.
So they kind of realized, no, we can't just have two heads sitting on shoulders.
We can't just have a dangling head.
It's not going to work. So there's this really cool thing that they do where Zaphod's second head is actually under his other head.
And they can flip it back.
And he can flip up and down so you can see it. And the two personalities of the two heads are kind of at war with each other. And I thought that was great. And that, my understanding is that's something that was introduced in the script when Douglas was still writing it.
Okay.
But the way it was directed, the actual way that the gags were done, the visual gags, I thought was great.
Yeah.
I really, really liked that. And I think that also extends to the design of the film.
Yeah. I thought it looked nice. I mean, I know you like how Marvin looks because we have a little statue of that Marvin downstairs.
I love the Marvin in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anything else on the did like?
Yes. I have a few.
Go ahead.
I made a short list.
Oh, okay. Please go ahead.
So I love how inventive it is. I love the design of it. I love how it begins. I love So Long and Thanks for All the Fish.
Yeah. The little music video at the beginning.
The musical number at the beginning, the big Busby Berkeley style musical number with dolphins is amazing.
Well, it's interesting that you say that was the beginning when you say that the director had done a bunch of music videos because it definitely felt that way.
Yeah, it's cut really, really beautifully. And I just think it was a great way to start the movie. I still remember sitting in the theater watching it for the first time, not really knowing how it was going to start. And having it's just joyful.
Yeah.
And that goes to another thing that I love about the movie is the movie loves the Hitchhikers. The people who made the movie clearly love the property.
I agree with that totally.
And they clearly love Douglas Adams, and they wanted to do such an amazing job for him and for the story.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And it's hard. I just feel like there are different, this podcast is about adaptation, and we've talked about this a little bit before. There are different categories of adaptation. I feel like it's like a quadrant square. It's really loved the property and did a great job.
Yeah.
Really did love the property but fell a little bit short. Mm-hmm. Didn't care about the property but did a great job, which I think is very rare. And didn't care about the property and also fell short, which I think is the most common. Or at least definitely the most common for people that didn't care about what they were making. So I think this is definitely in the category of really loved it but fell a little short.
Yeah.
And in terms of I don't know, karmic value in the universe, I almost think that's better than didn't care but did a great job.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They were scrappy. Mm-hmm. They wanted to do a good job. You can see that they did.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I agree with that. Which is why it pains me to talk about the things I didn't like.
Yeah, well, that's a good transition into them, though.
I have one more thing to say about a thing I did like.
Okay, go ahead.
When it came down to decide who was going to be the book, who was going to be the guide,
yeah,
I think they made the best decision they could have possibly made.
I mean, I feel like that is almost always the case when the answer is we cast Stephen Fry.
Exactly.
Because he's amazing in everything.
Except when they say, we need someone to be the master of Lake Town in The Hobbit.
I thought he was good as the master of Lake Town. I just didn't think that character needed to be in the movie.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's another episode.
Yeah.
Stephen Fry, not only I think is Stephen Fry perfect as the book, it works on a lot of levels because he and Douglas were so close.
Right.
They were friends, and so there's no one else I would have wanted as the book other than Stephen Fry. And what did you think of the actual animations?
Oh, they were really good. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, they were good. They were, yes. I thought that they really harkened back to the TV show animations quite a bit. They were sort of in the same spirit.
Right.
But a little more sophisticated.
And much more sophisticated, obviously, but also I think much more lively.
Yes.
It was a lot more energy to them, and I think it really kept the pace going.
Yeah, they were funny.
Yeah, so I thought the book was great. Let's talk about the stuff we didn't like.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, I have a bunch of problems.
Do you want to go back to Trillion for a minute?
Do you want to save that? Do you want to just get right into it?
Let's just get right into it.
Okay.
We've already talked about it. We've already alluded to it a couple of times. Okay. At the end of the movie, Trillion and Arthur are inexplicably, suddenly in love.
Yeah.
And he sort of confesses his love, and they make out really grossly, by the way. Just as movie kisses go, it's on the disgusting scale, like right up there.
It's not great.
It's not great.
Yeah.
But it's like, I don't know why we spent like the whole movie establishing like the independence of this character, and suddenly she's in love with this nice guy that's been like chasing her through the galaxy, and I don't understand.
There were a number of choices that were made with the character of Trillian that I could not disagree with more. And here's the deal. I have to blame the person who I feel deserves the responsibility.
Okay.
Douglas Adams.
Yeah.
Because he wrote this.
Yeah.
So the script, basically the biggest changes that were made to the script were Douglas Adams' decisions.
Yeah.
I cannot speak to it. He's no longer with us. I cannot speak to what was actually happening when they were discussing making the movie and writing the movie and going through draft after draft. But some decisions were made that I disagree with.
I mean, there were a couple, like basically about halfway through, it deviates from the original story.
Well, just from a structure perspective, the whole movie is just the first book.
Right. No, that's true. But I'm saying there is a ton of shit that happens.
Because they have to add it.
Right.
They had to expand it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, I think the movie should have been the first 2 books.
Yeah, that would have made more sense as a feature-length movie. But there's a bunch of stuff that happens that isn't in the second book. Like,
right.
It's just, I mean, I haven't read the rest of the book, so I don't know, but, like, I don't know if it appears there, but...
I mean, Hamakavula is mentioned, but it's not the same.
Yeah.
It really isn't the same. Like, Hamakavula never cuts off one of Zaphod's heads.
Right.
Like, that's not a thing that happens.
Right.
They don't go to Vogsphere. They don't go to the Vogon homeworld, and they're not attacked by paddles that slap you when you have an original thought.
Right.
Like, that was all added.
Right.
All of that was added.
So it's hard to compare it other than the characters are the same, because I would say fully about halfway through, the plot totally veers in a different direction and never actually really comes back, because they end up back on Earth, but it's like it's the one that Slarta Bartfast made. It's the
second one.
It's the second model. It's not how it ends in every other version, which is it is Earth just a long, long time ago.
Right. And so here are the things that I think they felt they needed to make happen in the story.
Yeah.
It needed to have a love story, and it needed to have a happy ending.
Yeah.
I think those 2 decisions are actually 2 of my biggest problems with the movie.
Yeah.
Because I don't think those are necessary in The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Yeah.
I think a love story, it runs counter to the characters, and I think a happy ending runs counter to the satire of it.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I just think it does the characters such a disservice to say like, oh, well, I guess you're the woman, so now you're part of a love story. Like, but then if they had added some other woman, that would have been just as problematic, because it's like, oh, we just added this character so Arthur could fall in love with someone.
Which happens in a future book.
Yes.
That happens in So Long and Thanks for All the Fish.
Okay, well, there you go.
Yeah.
But it's
so
like...
I shouldn't be surprised.
I guess I talked... When we talked about The Hobbit, I talked about sort of like... bringing female characters into the movie.
We're introducing inter-episode continuity at this point.
I guess we're going to have to definitely release The Hobbit before we release this one.
Go ahead.
But the concept of sort of bringing female characters into the plot only to be part of a love story, and it's like you don't need female... The sort of idea that the only reason you would need a female character is because someone needs to fall in love with them. And I just think it does Trillian such a disservice to say like, well, that's why if she's a woman, she must be here for a reason, therefore someone has to fall in love with her. Like, that's just really upsetting. Like, that's and that's not how the original character was portrayed. So like, I don't know why we have to be I don't know why as we go further in time, like in 2005, we have to be more regressive than the 1981 version. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And, I think that it just speaks to that idea. They think the story needed a love story, and it needed a happy ending.
Well, I mean, if any 2 characters are in love, it's Arthur and Fort Prefect. Like, never mind Arthur and Trillian.
I would say so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is this a good time to talk about what you didn't like about Ford Prefect?
Okay. This is what I didn't like about the casting of it.
Okay.
Of the movie.
I mean, I have a thought, but go ahead.
Okay. What I'm about to have is going to be the most predictable problem that I think any fan of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy was going to have.
Okay.
Which maybe makes it inherently valueless.
Okay.
I don't think that the characters of Ford and Zaphod and Trillian should be played by Americans. Mm-hmm. And I have a very specific reason for it.
Okay.
Because as I'm sure you can imagine, that was a big problem that a lot of people had.
I would think so, yeah.
You know? I do think that Mos Def, Sam Rockwell, and Zooey Deschanel did a great job in this movie. Mm-hmm. I really like the three of them. But, as I said before, I think The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy exists as a joke delivery device. Mm-hmm. And
the rhythm of the dialogue is not American.
The rhythm of the dialogue is absolutely British.
Yeah.
I think these lines were written to have to be read in a British voice, in that kind of, it's received pronunciation, right?
Yeah, RP.
Yeah. The kind of traditional British accent.
Yes.
And I think the reason for that goes back to, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to explain the joke, which is going to ruin the joke.
Go for it.
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is all about subversion. Mm-hmm. It's all about saying, this is where you would normally think we would go, but I'm going to go in a different direction. Mm-hmm. And it's about kind of subverting classism. When you have people say the lines that are in this story with this kind of upper class British accent, mm-hmm. I think it immediately draws attention to how absurd what they're saying is.
Yes.
There's a huge amount of absurdity to everything, which I think is a kind of thing that Monty Python trucked in for years.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Oh, that's what they did.
Yeah.
We're going to have the most ridiculously absurd things said by these very
proper people.
These very proper people.
Yeah.
So when you have Sam Rockwell doing, in 2005, the best thing that I could figure out is that he was doing a George W. Bush impression.
Okay.
When you have him saying the lines that Zaphod says in the book, I just don't think it works.
Yeah.
And when you have Mos Def saying lines that Ford says, I just don't think it works.
Yeah.
You know, there's a line when he says to Arthur at the beginning, time is an illusion, lunchtime doubly so. I don't think that works with an American accent.
Yeah. No, I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think you're right. Yeah.
So I don't think they should have cast Americans. That's the end of my kind of my point about that. I have a couple other small things. I don't like the score. I don't know how much you noticed it.
I didn't notice it at all.
It is very it's very in your face. Basically, the score in comedy I think is really hard, because I think the problem is, I think when done poorly, the score is designed to almost act as punctuation. Like someone says a joke and then there's an exclamation mark on the end of the joke, and it's like, and that's the music.
Like, ba-dum-bum.
Exactly, that kind of thing. The music throughout the whole movie, I think, is very over the top mm-hmm. and really cutesy. Mm-hmm. And I think it's very traditional.
Yeah.
It's very kind of like traditional Hollywood. It's very sweet. And I think that actually works against the tone of the story.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, just setting the tone.
Yeah, so I had a really big problem with that. Although the score also contains the Eagles' Journey of the Sorcerer, which is the theme music of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
There it is.
And sitting in the theater, when the first banjo chords start playing, I was over the moon.
Yes.
I was so happy about that.
Yeah.
So that's the thing that I did not like. So, yeah, I mean, I guess I'm not saying all of this stuff in order, but I just found like the rhythm of the dialogue was gone.
Yeah.
I actually said this to you when we were watching it, that like the way I look at the actual individual jokes from the book mm-hmm. is either do the whole joke or don't do the joke, but don't do half of the joke.
Right. Yeah. I think that was like, I think that's, again, like it's sort of British versus American humor, right? It's like one-liners versus sort of a more cerebral joke that takes a second.
Right.
And they don't give you that second to... they don't give you literally the second half of the joke, but like they expect the first half to be enough, and it's like, no, it sort of has to build on itself.
There's two examples that I can think of.
Yeah.
So in the earlier versions of it, when they first go on the Vogon ship, the Earth has been blown up. Arthur doesn't know that yet. And he says to Ford, "Where are we?" And Ford says, "We're safe. We're in the we're in the belly of a ship of a Vogon construction fleet." And Arthur says, "Oh, this is obviously a definition of the word safe I was previously unaware of."
Yeah.
In the movie, he says, "Ford, where are we?" And he says, we're in the ship in a Vogon constructor fleet." And Arthur's response is, "Oh, Ford, get me home." Like, it's very earnest.
Yeah.
But where's the joke?
Right.
If the language of the original is one of the things that makes it so good, why is that joke not in there?
Right.
I could very well be blaming Douglas Adams for this.
Yeah.
He might be the one that changed that line.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, who knows? Like,
Yeah.
like Douglas Adams maybe just isn't, like, a movie writer at the end of the day.
Yeah. Maybe he was trying to be.
Yeah.
But that gets to another thing that I'm going to say in a minute.
Maybe he's trying to be sort of more earnest and was like, no, we really have to talk about the emotions of the characters.
Yeah, and we don't need that. And then there's another line near the end, and it's the Slarta Bartfast line. I think I said it already.
Yeah.
But in the book, because I think it's one of my favorite lines in everything, he says, "You'll be late," and they have that whole conversation. And the end of the conversation is Slarta Bartfast saying, "It's sort of a threat, you see. I've never been very good at them, but I've heard they can be terribly effective."
And that's just left out.
That's just left out. The whole exchange ends with him saying, "It's sort of a threat," and then they move on.
Right.
Like I said, either do the whole thing or don't do it at all.
Right.
But don't give me half of it, because the language that Douglas Adams used, I really think the jokes built on themselves. Every line builds on the previous line, and I feel like they're funniest at the end.
Yeah.
Again, I'm explaining the joke, which clearly I could also be explaining it wrong. I could get the angriest letters about people saying, "You clearly don't actually understand what makes Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy funny."
Oh boy, but please don't write those letters.
I'm open to it. I'm open to
it.
Did we really finish going over the problems with the Trillion storyline?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's a part where she's like just a damsel in distress that got annoying.
It's such a bummer.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah,
I feel like the whole story
say.
just stops. All the momentum just stops as soon as she's a damsel in distress.
Yeah.
Because they all have to go rescue her, and it's a chance to make Arthur look like a hero, but Arthur Dent is not a hero.
Yeah. No. And then, like, the part where he's, like, flying around the Earth with Slarta Bartfast in this sort of, like, I can show you the world moment, I thought, like, the whole point of them coming back to Earth at the end, again, this is me explaining humor, but like my feeling was the whole point was it was supposed to be really tragic that like they realized, oh no, this isn't working at all, like everything's really screwed up and we're never going to get the answer because we didn't evolve in the way that we were supposed to because of these idiots that crash landed here. But this is like, look, I've made this beautiful new Earth for you. Aren't you happy? And then he's like, no, I'm going to get my girl. And then they make out, and that's the end of the movie. And it's like, oh, really?
Yeah, I guess I have two problems to kind of wrap up how I feel about the movie. Again, still have so much respect for the people who made it. They clearly love Douglas Adams, and I do too. So for that, I have a lot of respect for them.
Yeah.
And again, I could also be, we're probably blaming Douglas Adams for a lot of this stuff too.
Yeah.
Which is fair. I think he did make a lot of these decisions. There was another writer on the movie, a guy named Kerry Kirkpatrick, who I think a lot of people after the movie came out kind of blamed him for more of the Americanizing and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And everything that I've heard from the producers is that he actually put a lot of stuff from the books back.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of it really falls at the feet of Douglas Adams.
Yeah.
In terms of the problems that we have with it.
Yeah.
I really don't feel comfortable blaming the co-writer who was brought in after.
I mean, it's sort of a shame to blame someone for a movie that came out 4 years after they died. But
it
like,
is.
Who knows? Who
and
knows?
blame is the wrong word.
Yeah.
It's just, who is ultimately responsible.
Right.
Which I
is
guess
the same thing as blame. That
blame.
Literally is the definition of blame.
So one of my problems is the movie thinks it needs to be a certain way to be successful. Mm-hmm. It thinks it needs to be this very, happy ending, love story. If they were making it that way with the intention that this would make it more accessible to audiences, which would make it more successful, which would allow them to make a sequel, which apparently they had every intention of making.
It ends with the intention of a sequel. Like, they literally, like, ride off into the sunset together.
Exactly. If that was the intention, it didn't work anyway.
Yeah.
So why couldn't it have just been weird?
Yeah, if that was the intention, I think they really underestimated their audience, you know, and that's unfortunate.
You know, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy as a story is a very weird story that doesn't end happy.
Yeah.
But it's comedy. I mean, Life of Brian, how does that end?
It ends with them all being crucified.
Crucifying the main character.
Yeah.
And Life of Brian is one of the greatest
Singing a happy tune.
Singing a happy tune. It's one of the greatest comedies of all time. And yet they're afraid to have The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy end on a kind of a down note.
Yeah.
Like, it's not even that bad.
Yeah, I mean, I can only imagine, and this is pure speculation, but I can only imagine that it's like a bunch of people who are like, we really love this sort of niche thing. We need to figure out how to make it accessible to everyone because we love it so much and we want everyone else to love it too.
Yeah.
And I think they would have been more successful if they had been truer to the spirit of the original thing in getting that out to a mass audience than trying to sort of dumb it down.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's a line in it, specifically in I remember the producers talking about this, where they get the perspective gun, where when you fire it at someone, they instantly get your perspective.
Yeah.
And there's a line where Zaphod points it at Trillian, and do you remember what she says?
No.
She says, "It won't work on me anyway. I'm already a woman."
Yeah, I didn't like that line at all.
So apparently that line did not go over well in Britain.
Yeah.
But apparently went over really well when they screened it for American audiences.
Interesting.
And so I don't know. Apparently that kind of...
I don't even understand what that really means. Does she mean I already understand your perspective because I'm a woman? Like, I don't understand what...
I think it's a very simplistic view of the relationship between men and women.
Okay.
That women are very empathetic.
Okay.
And very in tune with other people's points of view and emotions.
Yeah.
Which...
That's dumb.
And I'm glad you're the one saying it.
It was just a dumb line. Like,
yeah.
If they were trying to have some commentary on gender, I think they missed the mark.
Yeah, and there's no rhythm to it. That could be Douglas Adams. Maybe he wrote that line. I don't know.
I didn't care for it. I didn't really even get it. I was like, wait, what? I don't understand that at all.
But you know, the way the original story ends is they're on Earth. They found out that
we're actually descended from idiots.
We're descended from idiots. We're not the program to find the ultimate question to life, the universe, and everything was, as they say, cocked up 2 million years ago. And Arthur and Ford just kind of walk off into the sunset together.
Yep.
And yeah, I guess from one perspective, that's a huge downer. But the whole story is a downer.
Yeah.
It's fine. That's where the comedy comes from in this story. So I just really didn't appreciate how they made all these decisions to make something that was more accessible. It didn't connect with audiences anyway. So if we were only going to get one movie, why couldn't we have gotten the weird version?
Right.
Why do we have to get the traditional version?
Right. Yeah.
So it just that's a thing that bums me out.
That's fair enough.
I guess one last thing I want to say about the movie in terms of my problems with it, I actually need to go to Douglas Adams. So there are a couple of adaptations we haven't talked about, but it was actually turned into a stage show twice in the 80s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. One was just a show. The other one was a musical. The musical didn't do well.
Shocker.
Yeah, that's something that we know now. The musical didn't do well. And this is Douglas Adams explaining why it didn't do well in his estimation.
Okay.
So he's talking about the Rainbow Theater where it was done. The size of the Rainbow, a 3,000-seat theater, and because Hitchhikers tends to be rather slow-moving and what is important is all the detail on the way, you put it in something that size and the first thing that goes out the window is all the detail. So you then fill it up with earthquake effects and lasers and things. That further swamps the detail, and so everything was constantly being pushed in the wrong direction, and all the poor actors were stuck on the stage trying desperately to get noticed by the audience across this vast distance.
Kind of sounds like the movie, huh?
It is exactly the movie. I was amazed when I read this.
Yeah.
I'll put it in the show notes, but there's a great book about the making of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It's called Don't Panic. Mm-hmm. It's written by an author named Neil Gaiman.
Neil Gaiman.
Gaiman.
Yeah, well, that rings
I don't know
a bell.
if anybody's heard of him, but it's called Don't Panic, and it's wonderful. It's really, really good. But I think that's just the best thing to end on in terms of the movie. they just went in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
And they focused on things that I think actually took away from the story rather than serving it.
Yeah. Let's wrap up on a good note.
Yeah.
What's the last shot of the movie? It was very sweet. Do you want to talk about it?
Well,
There's
so
not much to talk about.
I think I turned to you when the movie started and I said, I have a lot of problems with this movie, but I need you to know it's going to make me cry.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. So one of the things, kind of speaking to the inventiveness of it, one of the ways that they show the Heart of Gold kind of moving around the universe is that I'm making the assumption that if you're listening to this, you've seen the movie or you've read the book. Do you feel like it's worth it to kind of just explain really quickly how the infinite improbability drive works?
Not at the end of the podcast.
Okay, that's fair. That's super, super fair. Anyway, if you haven't seen it, see it. It's great. But essentially, the way they show the infinite improbability drive working in the movie is that the ship goes through various kind of ways of existing very quickly. So it'll just flash really quickly between like a rubber duck and a flower.
And a whale.
And a whale and a ball of yarn. Well, they create a whale.
The whale was really cute.
I love the whale.
It's
in every version.
The whale is so sweet.
Oh my God.
Anyway.
He's so good.
Yeah.
So, have I mentioned this is my favorite story?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's my favorite book of all time. In the very last moments of the movie, the ship is flying off and they engage the infinite improbability drive. And the very last thing the ship turns into as it flies towards the camera is Douglas Adams' face.
Yeah.
And it ends with the words, "For Douglas."
Yeah, it was really sweet.
And I have to give so much to the filmmakers because they, even though they gave me something that ultimately I wasn't satisfied with, I'm glad they were the ones that made it.
Yeah, because they were actually the ones that worked with him. Right.
I'm really happy it was them.
Yeah.
Even though we got something flawed, I'm glad we have this version of the movie. I'd rather we have this than a version that maybe was closer to what I wanted, but made by people that didn't really care about it.
Yeah, or not even didn't really care about it necessarily, but like didn't know him. Didn't know the guy that made it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's end on that happy note.
I just think everyone should. So let me ask you this. So now that we're at the end, do you have a favorite version?
Yes, I do.
What's your favorite version of it?
I think my favorite version is the radio play.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I think that's my favorite too.
Yeah.
Like.
But you know why? Here's why. Here's why. Because, okay, so we're talking about a radio play, a book, a TV show, and a movie.
Yes. Of
the four of those things, I think the radio play does the best job at being good at what it is. It's a really good radio play. The TV show is not a really good TV show, and the movie is not a really good movie. The book is fine. The book is a good book, of course. But I think
I think, to be fair, I think most people would pick the book as their favorite version of it.
Yeah, and the book, like, listen, I'm not saying the book isn't good, but as something to be experienced, I think the radio play is an excellent radio play, and I really enjoyed listening to it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people who have read the book who haven't heard the original radio play, and I would advise all of them to listen to it.
Yeah, it was really good.
Yeah,
and it's not long. Like it's like 6 half-hour episodes.
Oh yeah, no, it's really, really good. Yeah. I think I would go back and forth. I would say either the radio play or the book would be my favorites. Because there's stuff he adds in Life, the Universe, and in The Restaurant at the End of the Universe. There's stuff he adds that I really, really like. That isn't in the radio play. So I'd say from like a completionist standpoint, I think the books are my favorite just because they contain as much as possible. And also I can read the books in Douglas's voice. I can imagine the best versions of all the characters. And I think the rhythm of his writing is very apparent in the book. But the radio play is really fantastic.
Cool.
It really is great.
Yeah. So I think that's a nice note to end on. Do you want to tell people how they can get in touch with us?
Yeah. So if you would like to let us know how you felt about this episode, about us covering my favorite book of all time, I'd like to hear what you think about it.
Please be gentle.
Please.
He's very sensitive.
Please be gentle. You should read everything first before it gets to me. Just in case.
Yeah, I'll do that.
You might be super mad at me for explaining the jokes and getting things wrong. But no, if you want to get in touch with us, you can find us on the web at adapterparishcast.com. You can email us at adapterparishcast@gmail.com, and you can find us on Twitter at adaptcast. As always, I'm Jeremy Latour.
I'm Arielle Lipshaw.
And thank you all for listening. It's been nice hanging out with you.
So long, and thanks for all the fish.
That's really sweet.